Hi, Sandra here from Creating Spain. Today I wanted to show you a nice easy way of how to paint poppies. Now this is definitely for beginners. You might need to practice it a few times, but I can assure you with a little bit of effort you'll get something that you really quite enjoy doing. Now I've just got some very basic supplies. I have here some lightweight watercolour paper which has been cut into pieces, but I've got just a piece of sketch paper which you could also use. You can, if you're careful not to overdo the water, actually use normal type paper that you put in your printer. Now I'm using a water brush simply because it happens to have the right size tip for what I'm doing. In fact, I still got some paint in it from when I was using it earlier. You want something which is wider around the base and comes to a nice point, and it doesn't want to be too long in the bristles. So this one happens to be what I consider to be an ideal size out of the brushes that I have, and I'm just going to clean off some paint that was left in there. Now on my work surface I actually have some plain colourless sticky back plastic, so when I put paint on here I'm not putting it on my worktop, honestly, it's on top of plastic. It's just that I find that easier than having something which might be out of your view, and if I realise it's going out of shot then I can move things around a bit. I've got a cup of water and some kitchen towel, and the other thing I have are my paints. Now if you can see this on camera, and I think you probably should be able to, these paints are quite juicy. They are tube paints that I've put into an ice cube tray, and as you can see they're fairly well used. And in order to make them juicy like that, what you do is you add a couple of drops of glycerin when you put the tube paint in, and you add your water and you mix it up to a nice creamy consistency. If you put glycerin or even honey, and believe me, I've done it both ways, in with your paint, it keeps them nice and moist. I have a lid that goes on top of this particular one, and I've actually written my colours on top that I put inside with a permanent marker. So that's what I end up using, and if I need to refill I can see what colours I've actually got to put into which hole. Right, I've had to adjust my camera setup because I did all this video and then found you couldn't actually see what I was doing because my hand was obscuring things because it was being shot from overhead. So I'm hoping that this will actually work. Fingers crossed. Okay, so I'm going to take some of my paint, and I've changed this to a glass tile because I can move it around on my surface, because where I had it before it was going to be difficult to actually see much. So what I'm going to do is put a reasonable amount of the yellow paint onto my tile, and then I'm going to wash my brush off, dry it, and put it into some orange paint. Now I obviously need less of the orange than I do of the yellow. Now I've just cleaned my brush off again. Just grab a piece of paper towel, paint out of my brush. Now I'm going to have to paint this in a way that I wouldn't normally be doing it, simply so you can see, but hopefully it'll work. Right, so I have this and it's sort of like milk consistency. And what I'm going to do is do the front, whoops, I forgot my orange bit, didn't I? So I'm dipping that in the orange as well. So I don't know if you can see, there's orange on the tip and yellow further up. And what I want to do is the first petals. I'm literally just twisting this around. I'm going to swap hands because I can't do it backwards, and lift off. Now you can see, I hope, that there are two colours in here, the orange and the yellow. It now gets slightly easier for me to do because I don't have to sort of put my hand in awkward positions. Now I'm going to dip again just very, very slightly into the orange, and coming from the middle of the base, I'm going to come up the side of that petal, press down a little harder and follow the edge and come in. Now that one is a little bit too orange for my taste, so I'm going to clean my brush off, put a lot more yellow on, just dip very slightly into that one. Move this out the way because it's going to be in the way otherwise. Now very light pressure to start with, and then gradually putting the pressure down, and you can either wiggle it or not as the case is, but you're following the line of the original petal. More of the yellow, a little bit of the orange. I'm actually going to try doing this left-handed to see if I can. Very slight pressure, firmer pressure to make the petal bigger. Take the pressure off to finish the petal. And I'm going to do another one down here, I think. So I'm going to take it from the centre of the base out a little bit. I'm putting quite a lot of pressure on that. And then I'm going to do another stroke like so. So that is the basic idea of how you do this. Now, depending on how wet your paint is, or depends on how easy it is to control. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of green on my tile with some water and swap to a finer point. And doing this upside down, this is interesting. And just take a thin line like so. So I'm hoping this has worked and I don't have to do too many of these. Upside down, it's really hard to do. But I figured a video where you couldn't actually see what I was doing wasn't going to be of much use. Okay, so let's do some more. I'm going to add some more yellow to this. And just a little bit of the orange on the tip. I'm going to move this. I have to move my pie out of the way, I think. Just have to roughly gauge where you can actually see. So, pressing down, rolling around. I wouldn't normally swap hands, but yeah, doing it upside down is more difficult. Okay, so that's the first petal. You don't have to wash it off in between each one unless you think you've got too much of one colour. So I'm reloading now with the yellow. Make sure it's really well loaded, and just a little bit of the orange on the tip. I'm going to come from the base up the side here, and I'm going to press a bit more firmly and just following that first petal. Now I'm leaving it off because I'm finishing that petal there. I'm going to do another one starting here. I'm just going to make this a smallish petal, I think. There we go. And loading up again with yellow and a little bit of the orange. I'm going to come in left-handed this time. And like so. Don't think that one's quite as good, but it is very difficult for me to do this the wrong way around, I can assure you. Add a little bit of green, and then flick out. There we go. That's roughly how it's done. Now, if you have your paint too thick, you'll find that your brush strokes are very dry. And I can demonstrate this just by, actually that's not very dry, typical, but generally you'll find that you've got little sort of hairy marks if your brush is too dry. If it's too wet, you'll find it very difficult to control. So I'm just going to mix up some orange and make it very, very wet. Now you might like the effect, but you just might find it a little too difficult to control the colour and how it goes on. And I'm just going to dip the very tip of my brush into my paint palette, not the stuff that I got on the tile. And in this particular case, I'm going to do it around the right way for me, which is like so. I don't know if you can actually see that. Perhaps better move that in. And then I would do another petal coming up round here and dip it into the orange again to make it a bit darker, and then put another petal here, and then I might decide to do a little petal just there. Now, I'm not going to bother changing the colour, I'm just going to do a little sort of join there, and then like so. So that is how it's done. It will take some practice to get this right, but once you do get it right, it's good fun, and you can obviously do them in whatever colour you feel like doing them. So I would advise trying it onto a watercolour paper first of all, because that will be a bit more forgiving if you get too much water in your paint. But just practice with the consistency of paint. You need to make it so that the dark colour doesn't go too far up the bristles. Okay, you just want the dark colour right on the very tip. And if you have your paint too wet, then the dark colour won't be dark enough and it will just bleed into everything else. But if you have it too dry, you'll get very strong demarcation of lines, and you may not like that. So it's simply the amount of paint to water ratio that is the important bit on this. Other than that, it is relatively easy. Once you get that amount sorted out, then you'll find these are great fun to do. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care now.